Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Welcome to the Tanah Air lectures, the Malay Maritime Civilization Project, lecture 14. Today we are honored to have our speaker, Professor Datuk Osman Bakar, with the title, The Maritime Symbolism of Malay Islamic Civilization, Ecological Implications. Before I hand over to Prof. Osman, I would like to welcome all of you here, friends and colleagues, and those online. I would also like to remind us on the premise, on the objective of this project. This project started in August of 2021, where we had our first lecture. The idea here is to create a continuous conversation on redefining Malay civilization. Because we have been defining civilization, look at the discourse from a continental perspective. And if we look at civilization from a continental perspective, landlocked, land-based civilization, we cannot find Malay civilization. We cannot identify where, at which point in time is Malay civilization. There's a lacuna here. And also this project is to counter some of the criticisms levels at Malay society and at the accusation that the Malays do not have a civilization. People cannot find the Malay civilization because they measure it against, say, the Great Wall of China or the pyramids or the castles of Europe. Perhaps only recently, over the last few years, the discovery in Sungai Batu in Kedah that stretched the timeline of the Malays to more than 2,000 years, but that still is disputed. The narrative is still ongoing, it's immature. And again, there are no great monuments, only artifacts at the ground level. And again, this has increased the cynicism, the cynics saying that the Malays don't have. And when we talk about civilization, people also accuse some Malay intellectuals as going back to the past. Speaking of civilization is not going back to the past. Civilizations are not the past, but also the present and the future. Because civilizations, and we talk about modern or ancient, these are not compartmentalized. These are not mutually exclusive. And if we look at over a timeline, there is a dynamic continuity with past, present, and future. So when you talk about Malay civilization, it's both looking into the present for the future, but as they've been in the past. So there's no such thing as a separate world or a separate discourse and history. Of course, we need to go back to history, but looking into history by itself will also not be correct. So this discourse on civilization looks into the overlapping spaces, and Malay civilization is an example of an extremely overlapping space, spatially and temporally, and with regard to, again, the geography of the Malay archipelago, the influences of different timelines, different periods, and the influence of different civilizations, East and West. So this is why we are talking about this, and this is how we want to show and reappraise civilization and looking at it from a contemporary perspective. With that, I would like to introduce Prof. Osman. Let me. I don't have a time to print this out. Normally, I use paper to read, but I think it's important. Everybody knows Prof. Osman Bakar. He was my internal examiner for my PhD. Alhamdulillah.
You made me feel old.
And I asked recently, all this biodata, I said there may be some recent accomplishments and achievements that I need to tell. But I will go through what was given to me. Prof. Osman has a doctorate in Islamic philosophy from Temple University and is currently holder of Al-Ghazali Chair of Epistemology and Civilizational Studies and Renewal at ISTEC IIM and Emeritus Professor of Philosophy of Science at University of Malaya. That's why I took my PhD at the Science and Technology Studies Department. And when I was in the States, I met Syed Hussein Nas. I wanted to be a student. And once he told me, you look like Professor Usman Bakar. I mean, you look like Usman Bakar at the time. I think 1985, when I was in Minnesota, I attended lectures by him. He was also a formerly distinguished professor and director of the Sultan Omar Ali Saifuddin Center for Islamic Studies, University of Brunei Darussalam, and Malaysia Chair of Islam in Southeast Asia at Georgetown University, Washington, D.C. Dr. Osman is author and editor of 43 books and numerous articles on various aspects of Islamic thought and civilization. Some of his works have been translated into several Asian and European languages. He co-edited with me and Dr. Wan Ali, Colonialism in the Malay Archipelago, Civilizational Encounters 2021. It's on display there. I think this is one of the, maybe the first book of its kind published in Malaysia. His most well-known book is Classification of Knowledge in Islam, 1992, and revised second or third edition. His latest works are Environmental Wisdom for Planet Earth, the Islamic Heritage, 2022, and Islam, Buddhism, Eco Dialogue, 2023. He has been named among the 500 most influential Muslims in the world since 2009. And Prof. Osman has been awarded many awards for his scholarship and his writings. With that, Osman, thank you.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alamin. Wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil anbiya mursalin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. And a very good afternoon. Professor Murad Marikan, the moderator and was the coordinator of this very important lecture series. Professor Pergut, the Dean of ISTEC, and colleagues and friends and everyone, thank you very much for coming to attend this lecture today. And of course, this is hybrid, so there are many people who are watching this, who are listening to this lecture online. First of all, I would like to thank Professor Murad for inviting me to be a part of this very, very important lecture series. When he extended his invitation to me immediately after he conceived of this series, I gladly accepted that because I know it is a very important one. And I understand for him that it's coming to a close now, 2 more lectures to go, and then inshallah he will be, hopefully, I hope he will edit this very, very important volume. So of course, when I don't know what topic I wanted to speak on, but I've been given the ample time. Basically, this program started in 2021. So I have a lot of time to think about. I listen to most of the lectures given by the other speakers. So I thought for me to be faithful to the theme of the series, the Malay Maritime Civilization Project lecture series, came to my mind that it might be a good idea if I talk about the Malay civilization as a maritime civilization, but concentrating on the symbolism of that maritime symbolism. Now, we live, so that is the topic. My topic is the maritime symbolism of Malay Islamic civilization. The subtitle is ecological implications, and there is a reason also why I chose ecological implications and not political implication, for example, because I think this politics compared to ecological is nothing really, because today in our times, ecological implications is the most important thing. It pertains to the survival, the very survival of our own humanity, and of course for the Malay civilization, as I shall say later, I mean the ecological implications are great. All right, so that is the topic, and so I would like, I know the words in the topic, like Malay, that is a contested word nowadays. Civilization is a contested word. People ask, why Malay Islamic? I mean, I've been asked, what's the meaning of Malay Islamic? I appreciate, and I understand why that question is, because in our own country, Malay Islamic is also being politicized. So people don't get I'm not going into politics. I'm going to go into the purely academic, scholarly, and basically my approach is the civilizational approach, which inshallah I'll do. All right. Now, actually I have distributed this abstract, but let me just go through. It's also to refresh my mind. Malay civilization is traditionally known as a civilization that is built at the ecological interface of land and sea. That is very, very important. The word here, interface of land and sea, or interface of tanah and air. The two words which gave the theme, or the theme that I think Professor Murad has wisely chosen. It's very, very significant, the interface of tanah and air. Thus, the history of Malay civilization is essentially the history of this interface, which is multidimensional in its scope and characteristics, as shaped by the Malay ethnic genius. And I've referred some of my writings, the idea of Malay ethnic genius. Ethnic genius was just, as I talk in one essay, I talk about the Malay ethnic grace. Malay ethnic grace in the context, in certain, talking about the history of the Malays in Malaysia. The aim of my presentation is to highlight some of the major maritime symbols associated with the identity and character of Malay civilization. Since there are so many symbols, I have to select the most significant ones. These symbols are to be found in various domains of traditional Malay civilization, including language, socio-cultural manifestations, urbanism, politics, psychology, and religion. Now, this is a very important word, Nusantara, which we all know, don't use, but I want to pay special attention to this word, Nusantara, even to go to the philosophical significance of that, Nusantara. The Nusantara character of the Malay-speaking world poses ecological challenges to its survival as a unique civilization that is once traditional and modern. So that is the abstract of my presentation. I hope to touch these various issues that are embodied in this abstract. All right, now I would like to begin by saying that there will be two theories guiding my discourse, two guiding theories. Now, I myself have formulated these theories. I published some of these, but unfortunately, nobody took up. So I don't know. But I want to repeat this to share with you again here. Two guiding theories of discourse, very, very relevant to my presentation, the topic of my discussion. I call theory number one, theory of genesis of civilization. Genesis of civilization, which applies to all civilizations, not only to Malay civilization. And this genesis of civilization. Civilization is the child or offspring of a marriage between ethnicity and religiosity. So I'm bringing in the issue of marriage symbolism, marriage. So it's not marriage between two people, but we're here, marriage between ethnicity and religiosity. That is basically the main thesis of that theory. In order to understand the birth of Malay civilization, we can go to this theory. Now, the source of my inspiration is as a student of philosophy, I mean, as you can see, the source of inspiration is philosophical. Aristotelian theory of hylomorphism. So some of you have heard the theory of hylomorphism, which is basically the theory of form and matter. Hyle, that's in Greek, form, matter, and morphism that referring to the form, the theory of form and matter. My explanation, what is matter? In this case, it is ethnicity. The Arabic word is madda. So the madda of the is ethnicity. And the form, surah, and this is a surah, not sin, there's a surah form, not the chapter. This is religiosity, is form, surah. Now I apply this theory to the Malay civilization. So I'm saying, in its long history, Malay ethnicity has had cultural marriages with several religions. Each marriage has produced a distinct Malay civilizational identity. Before Islam, the Malays, basically the Malay ethnicity has entered marriage, marriage with Buddhists, with Buddhism, the center of which in Srivijaya, in Sumatra. Then you had the Hinduism. Before that, the kind of shamanic religion, shamanism, even going to the ancient Javanese and the Javanese religion. Well, basically, I think we can only speculate with regard to what was the first marriage. What was the first marriage? This is that the Malay ethnics had. Yeah, I see with that form of shamanism. Now, so this is very important theory. If you want to understand what kind of Malay civilizational experience that they had with the previous religion, and therefore for Muslims today, when the majority of the Malays have already embraced Islam, we cannot just ignore. We just cannot ignore the pre-Islamic heritage, because the Malays were already civilized. The Malays were already civilized before they embraced Islam. It's not correct for some Muslims to maintain that. No, and I heard some both Muslims and non-Malay, but they're Muslim, talking about, well, as for you the Malays, I mean, you did not have civilization before Islam. You were just like the Arabs or Israelia. No, it's not the same. It's not the same. But that is an achievement. I mean, that is something it's not a loss to Islam to say that, no? To say that before Islam there was already civilization. It only shows that Islam can attract the attention even of civilization to its own, to its own path. I think that is important. It is even greater. It is a greater achievement to be able to lead people with civilization history to become Muslim, rather than to attract people with no civilization at all. I think it is an important thing. Yeah. All right. All right. Then let me go to theory number 2. The theory of civilization building or civilization construction. Civilization building, this actually, this one, for those interested in the theory number 1, I published in several, in both journal and chapters of books, including a book, Islam in Transition, co-edited by John Esposito and John Donahue. So one of chapters is mine. I explain that theory number 1. Now, theory number 2 here, yeah, actually, I presented this during my Al-Ghazali inaugural lecture. Civilization building has 4 pillars: territorial, demographic, ideological, and legal, ethical, moral. The source of my inspiration for this theory is the Prophet's civilizational building in Medina. Explanation: in the case of that civilization in Medina, Medina was the territorial basis. The new Arabs, when we say the Arabs who come to Islam, the new Arabs here, referring to the Arabs who embrace the new religion, Islam, they would form the demography. Demography here, including the idea of the backbone, the tulang belakang. This is very important if we bring it to our present day issue. I prefer to say that the Malays should form the backbone of the Malaysian nation. Backbone. That is the back. Yeah. In other words, it's different from to say about the concept of ketuhanan. Yeah. But here and talk about the backbone. The present backbone and inshallah the future backbone. So that's the new demography. And then the Islamic creed, the ideological, the Aqidah, the Islamic creed, and then the Muhammadan Sharia as the legal, ethical, moral. Basically, is the Sharia. So that was for the civilization, the first Islamic civilization in Medina. And now, I'm saying I can apply this to the creation, to the emergence of the Malay Islamic civilization in the Malay archipelago, beginning, say, with the foundation of the Malay Sultanate in Pasai. Yeah. So the application of the to Malay civilization, the territorial basis is the whole Nusantara. It's the whole archipelago. Then the demographic is people of the Malay stock, the Rumpun Melayu, which I include the Malays or the Philippines. I think early next month, we are going to have just a launching of our friend, in Philippines, the Filipino hero, Rizal. The launching of the Rizal Chair. The launching of the Rizal Chair at the Academy of Malay Studies, University of Malaya. That's very important because he argued, of course, campaigned this question of the Malay identity of the people in the Philippines. Although, when you go back to the question of marriage, the civilization marriage is a marriage between the Malay ethnicity and the Christian, more Catholic, the Catholic religion. And it's easy to see. You can compare that marriage, which happened to the people in the north, the Luzon, and compare to the south. The south is the Malay ethnicity with Islam. in order to see how these different cultural measures can be different, the Philippines provide a very, very interesting case. There's been works written to show the difference between the marriage between the Filipino Malays and Christianity and the marriage between the Filipino Malays and Islam. Yeah? Now, that is that in terms of the demographic. So even now, you have people from other races and so on, racial groups coming to the region in the modern period. That does not destroy the idea. That does not destroy the idea of the people of the Malay stock as the backbone of the Nusantara civilization. Yeah, and then in terms of the creed, in terms of the ideological, is the kepercayaan or agama. Before in the early part of Malay history, it's just a kepercayaan. It's written, yeah. Agama is Sanskrit. It's not original Malay. Yeah? But the original Malay is kepercayaan. Means just simply the belief, percaya. Even today, I think in Indonesia, there are those who refer to it's kepercayaan. When I refer to to religion, it means kepercayaan. That is the ancient Malay word, percaya. And from the viewpoint of Sharia, is the kesusilaan. But then that is not original Malay. Susila is Sanskrit. That is Sanskrit. Why is urban earlier? That's Malay. Kesopanan. Sopan. Sopan, I don't know if the Malay experts here, please correct me. But I'm saying the Malay word sopan predates the word susila. Because sopan was more ancient, more indigenous. And it's part of the Rukun Negara. Kesopanan dan kesusilaan. Rukun Negara today. All right, these are the two theories guiding me to always bear in mind these two theories. No? Now, let me explain what I mean by maritime symbolism. I need to explain this because we have been reading a lot of modern materials on maritime. We have been, our mind has been, in a sense, got used to this very narrow meaning of maritime. Yeah. So now maritime just referring to basically to trade, to sea trade, navigation, maybe also fish, the fisheries industry and so on. But if you look into the dictionaries, the more ancient dictionary, the better. I think more authentic in terms of. So maritime basically referring to that, basically that interface. It's not simply pertaining to the sea. Anything that pertains to the sea, yes, that's maritime. But in a sense, there is one other element which you cannot separate from the sea, which is the coast. The coast, yeah? And this is important. Therefore, really, maritime activities pertain to the sea and the coast. And that interface between the sea and the coast, that's what the origin of Malay civilization is. That interface produced a civilization that has evolved over thousands of years. So I said maritime pertains to human activities connected to the sea or the coast. And therefore underlying maritime symbolism is thus the use of various symbols to signify the multi-dimensional interface between land and sea. The role of the coast is very important in a maritime civilization such as the Malay civilization. Because, and I'm going to show, by giving an example, I just show examples of this interface between the two. Now, with regard to geophysical, now to talk about the geophysical and geographical identity of Malay civilization, I now introduce now the word Nusantara. This is not a big word, but maybe I'll speak more about this. What is Nusantara? What is the origin of the word Nusantara? Well, it's a combination of two words, Nusa and Antara. Now, it's very, the word Antara is also very, very close in meaning with the avatar of the Sanskrit. It's very interesting. Antara, avatar. And also the Latin word, the old Latin word, Antara. Yeah? Antara. Terra means earth. Terra. Terra, bumi, earth. Enter, in, is in. But, I mean, when I thought that, I was fantastic. I mean, something to reflect upon. This the question of Antara in Malay, Antara in Latin, and avatar in Sanskrit. Avatar is basically something like Rasul, the intermediate. This intermediate, yeah, the concept of the avatar in the Hindu thing, which may correspond to the meaning of Rasul, and something like Gabriel alayhi salam, that is intermediary between God and human beings and the prophet. Yeah? So the two, Nusa, but what's Nusa? Nusa is not Sanskrit. Nusa was original Malay. It means island. Nusa simply means island, pulau. Nusa. Now, but I say, yeah, the idea of Nusantara, it means an archipelago, because an archipelago means a long stretch of water and land, different to island basically, is an extensive island. This was a self-island. So that's why in Malay we have Gugusan Pulau Melayu. Gugusan. The word Gugusan is galaxy. So the word Gugusan is used both for the islands as well as for the of the stars of the bintang in the galaxy in the cosmos. But it means archipelago in the case of the island. So basically, Nusantara is a name that's given to the whole archipelago, where thousands of islands. It's a unique archipelago. There are other archipelagos in the world, but the most famous archipelago in the world is the Malay archipelago. And the idea of Nusantara is inter-island connectivity. Inter-island connectivity. That was in the Malay consciousness from the beginning. Then they live in so many islands. If in English you have the phrase, no man is an island, the early Malays can say, speaking of the island, no island is an island. No island is an island. Why? Because they have to talk about inter-island connectivity. The uniqueness of the Malay Nusantara, the Caribbean is also a kind of, Nusantara, the Caribbean, but don't call that. But in our case, the etymological meaning of Nusantara also becomes the social cultural meaning, the social meaning of that Nusantara. And now today we can think about the Nusantara spirit. Yeah. Okay. But now let me talk about the civilizational identity, not just the physical, but in terms of physical identity of the region, of the whole region, of the Malay-speaking world, there's Nusantara. We keep that in mind. Yeah. In terms of the civilizational identity, I can only talk about here in brief, because I want to go to the symbolism. The evolution of the Nusantara spirit shaped the development of Malay civilization. I'm making that claim. I'm making that claim, and I will, in a longer writing, I will certainly, inshallah, in the paper later on, I will explain that. Yeah? The evolution of the Nusantara spirit, because the Nusantara spirit evolved also. Yeah, it has been a long way since people the first time the Malays talk about Nusantara spirit, And the modern day Indonesians, I mean, in Indonesia is very popular to talk about Nusantara, the Nusantara airport, yeah, capital, the Nusantara capital, yeah, the new capital of Indonesia. I mean, it's already the old ancient idea that's being revived. Yeah. So the evolution of the spirit shaped the advance of Malay civilization, and here, of course, as a civilization, what it means that right from the early beginning. In the beginning, I would say it was a kind of sea nomadic life. Remember, Murad, when you had talked last time, conversation, you talk about how we can compare between the Ibn Khaldun theory of civilization building origin, but concentrated to the desert. It's basically the Arab civilization was a desert civilization. Yeah? But the Malay is a kind of different desert, it's the sea. So just as the Arabs have nomads, the Bedouins, the nomads, the Malays, we have our nomads, the sea nomads. The sea nomads. And these are the Orang Laut, the sea nomad. So we distinguish between originally when the Orang Laut does not refer to any particular group. Basically, Orang Nusantara is nomadic, I mean, Orang Laut. Everybody is an Orang Laut. But once sedentary settlements, basically the coastal settlements appeared, then gradually became used to particular people who, although there is already permanent settlement, but still you have nomadic people in the sea. I think that's it. But otherwise, it's very interesting comparison between Ibn Khaldun's theory of civilization, and I want to talk about the theory of the Malay civilization. So that began with sea nomadic life, then of course settle, and then of course sea trade. Sea trade is something very something normal in this Nusantara thing, because of that inter-island connectivity, trade, travel, exploration, navigation, coast settlement, and coastal urbanism. I'll explain later what I mean by coastal urbanism. Coastal urbanism is something comparable to the Madinah, Yeah. In other words, the Prophet SAW built the new Islamic civilization in the city, Madinah, and that's what what Farabi conceptualized the idea of Madani, and now being applied by Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim. But all go to the idea of the Medina, Well, for the desert, yes, that's the idea of the Medina. But for us, the Malay world, what is that? This is important, yeah. This what we call coastal urbanism. I'll introduce the terms afterward, yeah. And of course, with their attending know-how, these are important facets of Malay civilization. It is these manifestations which make navigation very important to the Malays, shipbuilding very important to the Malays. I won't be able to go into all these details into the Malay achievements in navigation, in technology, sailing, and so on. Others have done. My colleague, Professor Datuk Wan Ramli Wan Daud has done on that. Of course, Prof. Razin, so it is important. The what you call the know-how. But it's also important for the history of science, because many people in the modern world who think that the people before modern times knew very little about knowledge of the world, but actually they knew a lot. It's just that they use different concepts. It's an entire different approach how to know about the sea. And just as the Arabs in the deserts knew a lot of astronomy, knew very well how to be guided by the stars. So the Malay, the Malay also navigators knew to be that. In other words, they knew a lot about from the behavior of fishes, the movement of shoals of fish. They knew a lot from that. They knew a lot of influences from that. By looking at the flights of birds in the air, they knew a lot from that. Yeah. So it's a different kind of knowledge. What today is called the kearifan, what? Yeah, kearifan lokal, tempatan. Yeah, they call the local wisdom. All right. Now, of course, in the same process of civilizational identity development, you have the emergence of political ideas of Tanah Air. So the word Tanah Air, which means homeland. See, the English call land. I mean, they cannot run away from land, whole land. But for the Malays, the homeland is, no, it's not just land. It's also air. Tanah Air plus air. Don't separate the two. To speak for non-Malays, please don't separate the two. Yeah. And that's why the interface. Back to the question of interface. Interface, you cannot separate that. So the emergence of the physical idea of Tanah Air and Pribumi, of course. But that's Tanah and Air is that is a Malay word, yeah. But Pribumi, then the Bumi is Sanskrit, Bumi. And of course, when Islam came, Watan, yeah, yeah. Now, how does it shape Malay civilization? How does idea shape the civilization? I'm sorry. The geophysical features. Think about it. The geophysical features of Nusantara generated a certain spirit of openness. I think again, by comparison, you go to the Arabs, nomads, yeah. In other words, the open desert. In this one, there is a kind of parallel between the Arab spirit and the Malay spirit as far as this thing is concerned. Spirit of openness, spirit of generosity, sharing, and the spirit of moderation among its people. This can be verified by anthropologists, by sociologists who want to study Malay cultural life. But I'm approaching from civilizational thing. So I think it is, I can talk about as a general concept, spirit of openness, generosity. When you live in such kind of environment, it is Nusantara environment, there must be impact. There must be a psychological impact on the people, yeah? And moderation among its people. I've been thinking, I mean, when you say sailing the seas are your path. How can you afford to be extreme? Can you afford to be extreme in such an environment as the as the Nusantara environment? Cannot. You have to take the middle path. You have to be moderate. So I'm saying the Malays have been moderate by nature. Yeah? Moderate by nature. Now, Malay civilization is open and friendly to such influences, including in language. I think to the extent that that's too open, especially in Indonesia. I think I cannot understand anymore the current Indonesian language. So many, it's no longer a Bahasa Melayu in Indonesia. It is everything. I mean, so I prefer to speak in English nowadays to speak to Indonesian academics because I cannot understand. Yeah. And that is to the extreme side in that case. Okay, in other words, language is too friendly, open to outside influences. I think that should be balanced. And Malay civilization is inclusive. This can be, again, in order to appreciate it, you have to go to the history of the Malay culture, because precisely because our region has been open at first to the Indian influences, then to the Chinese influences, to the, especially in Java, what kind of open influence, the influence of Cheng Ho, Shanhe, yeah, the influence of the Buddhist influence, and then the Islamic influence, and then the European influence. Regardless, I mean, in terms of a certain kind of force, but the point is, it's inclusive. You know, the features of Malay civilization show that it is inclusive. Malay civilization is noted for its gender harmony. When I was at Georgetown, teaching at Georgetown for 6 years, I mean, this was one of the things was raised because some of the scholars there do compare in terms of the role of women in society, in the Indian subcontinent, in the Arab world. Somehow, what was happening in the Malay world struck their attention. Yeah. In other words, the male and the females together in all sectors of life involved. But what attracted my attention was a statement by Professor Datu Asma Omar, our philosopher of language University of Malaya. I learned this from him. He's talking about we can talk about the Malay and gender relation. He said Malay is a gender neutral language. Gender neutral language. For the most part, as at least the structure. What do you mean? Well, look at the pronouns. Look at the pronouns. So the Malays use the word dear. Dear is gender neutral. What you say he, you know, he, she, but in pronouns, in the Malays do not distinguish. When say when referring to a third person, that third person embraces both male and female. That's called the dear. It's not he or she. Yeah. So there's so many. In other words, we don't distinguish between that. So when I say pengurusi, all right, it doesn't matter. Woman is still pengurusi. All right. Male is also pengurusi. Yeah. But in the English, in modern time, you have chairman and chairwoman. Yeah. Well, so many women complain, why should be the word be chairman? We are not men. Don't call us chairman. Call us chairwoman. And not to go, they go to neutral chairperson. You have to go to that. But the Malays all along, Mrs. Lee. When you want to refer to the person, is dear. Not he, not she, not that. Well, I thought that was something interesting and noteworthy. Yeah? Yeah, maybe. Right. So do want to do further studies on this, please. Yeah? All right. I'm sorry, I'm not. It is correct. The maritime symbols in cosmological belief. Now, this even in other words, traces of maritime symbolism, even in cosmology here. Let me see. I just I don't want to miss anything here. I take the. I think I can still I have ideas that I can explain in the later slides. Yeah. Yeah. Cosmology. I want to go into cosmology here to trace the maritime symbolism. The four-element theory of nature. The four-element theory of nature. Of course, this is not unique to Malay science. It is basically in general in Islamic science, in Greek science. Yeah, there are four elements. In other words, there are four elements that form the world, the material, then every object in the world, which is earth, water, air, and fire. Earth, water, air, and fire. These are the 4 elements. If you read the Malay manuscripts and the old Malay writings in Jawi, for example, you look at their manuscripts on Malay medicine, especially that talk about this 4 element theory. That was the pre-modern science. In pre-modern science, it is a 4 elements, different from the modern chemical elements, the theory of the chemical elements in modern chemistry. Here is based on different classification of material things. So before Islam, yes. In other words, before Islam, because it's also in Hinduism. So the only difference we have here with the Chinese, because they are the 5th element, wood. The Chinese as the 5th element, wood. But in the food, actually, it is into detail. But in principle, the 4 elements have already included, have integrated the wood element into that. So wood is a particular combination of the 4 elements. So yeah. So and I'm saying, sorry, wood. Yes, wood. Kayu. So I'm arguing that this 4 element theory of nature prescribed, subscribed to by the Malays, by the traditional Malays, has an effect on the Malay soul and the psyche. Not the 4 elements in themselves, but how the 4 elements are formed. So let me make a statement here. So the integral to the Malay cosmological beliefs is the 4 element theory of the world. Every natural object is composed of earth, water, air, and fire in specific proportion. That is the key, specific proportion. So I'm saying the variety in proportions of the 4 elements constituting natural objects that exist and are distributed in the Malay archipelago is what shapes the region's biophysical diversity and its ethnic psychological temperament. Yeah? So in other words, when we come to the Nusantara ecology, the geophysical ecology, there's something different. Yeah. It is not the same as the Caribbean. Yeah. Even there are some other regions that share the same climate, still different from the Nusantara. So there's something unique about the Nusantara region. Precisely because the 4 elements are combined in a certain way, certain proportions, yeah, that make it different. I think scientists, biologists who are studying the ecology of the Nusantara, they will support this idea. But it's not simply biophysical diversity. Also, I say the impact on the Malay soul and psyche. Jiwa Melayu. Jiwa Melayu. Apa sebenarnya jiwa Melayu? What is this Malay soul? Is there any difference between the Malay soul and the Indian soul, the Arab soul? Well, according to Ibn Sina, yes. According to Ibn Sina, yes. It's very interesting. I was inspired by that by Ibn Sina. So, Dr. Nurul, you talk about Ibn Sina in the Canon of Medicine. Actually, he referred the impact on climate on our psyche. So I'm saying now the Malay soul is somehow related to the impact also of the climate. Yeah. So the psychological temperament. So the Malay temperament, there's such thing as a Malay temperament, which is different from the Arab temperament or Indian temperament. Let me talk about the example, give an example. Yeah. The psychological response to anger. In other words, there's a difference between Malay anger and the Arab anger. Right? Difference between Malay anger and Arab anger.
They now live in the same area.
No,
Malaysia has so many different people.
Well, it doesn't take us just several years, several decades to realize that. you cannot see observe the impact and different, but over a long period of time. So the Malay anger and the Arab anger, one is explosive, the other is implosive. I go to Cairo. It's not uncommon, you see, because accidents happen every now and then. But to let the, in other words, the Arab anger is immediately they start shouting at each other. Yeah? They're shouting at each other, of course, blaming each other. But shortly later, after, they embrace each other. But the Malay anger, is manifested in some ways. It is suppressed. I think it is suppressed. It is suppressed. So something to do with the damp, The dampen must be something, yeah. I said here, the dominance of water and earth in Nusantara ecology has implications for the Malay psyche. So in other words, you keep to yourself. You tak suka, you don't like something, you keep to yourself. You don't make it open. Until it reaches the breaking point, which you call amok. Well, you can contest that. but the impact of so there must be something they call the impact of water, the dominance of water and earth, of course, in food as well, and then pass it to our psyche. Sorry, I hope to assign now. Okay, now I want to talk about the maritime symbolism again. Another in Malay cosmological belief, something more important here. Maybe Dr. Nasrin will be more interested in this. Maritime versus desert civilization. We are maritime civilization, and opposite contrast to desert civilization. Now, the core of traditional Malay Islamic civilization is its cosmological beliefs that emphasize divine immanence rather than divine transcendence. This is a difficult concept to conceive, may also be controversial, but stick to it. I said then immanence is about presence and continuity, whereas transcendence is about absence and discontinuity. Continuity is best symbolized by water. Hence the Malay proverb, air dicincang tidak akan putus. Try to cut water into pieces. Severed it will never be. That's my English translation of that. Air dicincang tidak akan diputus. You try to cut into pieces. It will never be severed. All right. In contrast, discontinuity is best symbolized by sands of the desert. Just contrast between water and sands. Now, it's because in Islamic cosmology, if we just take one version, one interpretation that is discontinuity, then we are not talking about the nature of the whole cosmos. So basically, the issue here is theological. What is the relationship between God and the world? Most Muslims affirm transcendence and discontinuity between God and creation, God and the world. That's it. That's the perspective of transcendence. And that's why you use the word, the Arabic word, the Quranic word, khalaqa, create. Even in English, the word create, the verb create, the act of create always implies separation between the person who is the creating and the object that is created. So there is that separation between the creator and creation, between the maker and the object that's made. Like we make chairs. So we are a person and the chair is separate. But there is another word that is actually is citation there, no? The idea of flow, continuity, which is in English is used emanation, but this word has been misunderstood by a lot of many people, and many Muslims objected. For example, some people rejected Farabi's theory of the generation of the intellect because it smells emanation, which is said to be inherited from the Greeks. But actually in Islamic thought is the two you have. When you talk about the flow of mercy, when you talk about the flow of rahmah, the mercy, it's not create, that is a flow. Yeah, of course in nature it's the sun. Yeah, you cannot separate between the sun and the rays that come from the sun. The source of the rays is the sun. You cannot separate between the source and the object from which the source. That is what's called something to do what we call that the emanation. What's the word Arabic? Phaidon. So we have this, but we have debates on this. But actually, as far as I'm concerned, these are two aspects of the relationship between God and creation, between God and the cosmos. Yeah. So the same thing in history. We find, so let's say the Malays, for example. Today, scholars of religion would describe shamanism as a form of pantheism. Yeah. But pantheism means pantheism is to be understood correctly, to be understood as identification of the inner of substantial identification. In other words, it is not figuratively, but if you say that God somehow is present in the world in the essential sense, and that's pantheism. But when you talk about the relation between God and His science, the world is God's science. Then it's different. The Quran speaks of ayatullah, the verses. Yeah? So that connection between God and the science, basically, that is it's not discontinuous. That's what the science. Okay, let me go to the next one. What I have? Urbanism, this is very important. I cannot miss this. Urbanism in Malay maritime civilization, because it's basically this Malay version of the rise of human civilization. If Ibn Khaldun had stayed in the Malay world, he would have revised his theory. He would revise his theory. In other words, the urbanism was not born in the oasis desert, but here on the coast, the pesisir. So basically, tamadun Melayu is tamadun pesisir. Really. Later on, of course, with modernization, we go into the hinterland. That's different. But in the beginning, it was a phenomena pesisir, urbanism. But it's something very important here. Of course, it went through this water village, which is Kampung Air. I worked in Brunei for 6 years. I love the Kampung Air in Brunei. If you go to Brunei, please visit the Kampung Air. Yeah? Well, it's complete. It's complete. It is a complete city. Everything is there. Yeah? You have school, you have masjid, you have even sports and field is the football. No, you can play for football, and that is the last, perhaps the last significant surviving water village. Before, water village was everywhere. Water village was once everywhere, but now it's just in some parts. But in the Philippines, in Brunei, you have this water village, because that was the sedentary civilization, settlements, developed form, already developed away from the nomadic life that settled, built, basically is the beginning of the sedentary civilization as far as the Malay. But quite more important here is the port city. Of course, the Kota Melaka. The Kota Melaka is the best example of urbanism in Malay Maritime, right? and civilization. But it was basically a port city. Just as you have Medina in Arabia as a city-state, the Prophet built civilization in city-state. In our part of the world, they have the port city, Kota Pelabuhan, Kota dan Pelabuhan. Yeah, together. So Kota Melaka was both a city and a port. And of course, the word Labuh there, that itself is a maritime symbol. Labuh, yeah, berlabuh. It means referring to you want to depart from the land to go out into the sea, berlabuh. Yeah, and then of course, the coastal town, which is Bandar. Today, Bandar. Bandar, the Persian origin of the word Bandar. It is originated from Persian, not Arabic. Bandar. Yeah? Now, but what is the significance of the word Bandar? Bandar refers basically to a town that is built on the coast. That's Bandar. So the Bandar is basically, it is a Kota Pelabuhan. So in other words now, as far as the evolution of basically urbanism, urbanism as a phenomena, which is really called Pembandaran, urbanism, that's Pembandaran, which comes from the word bandar. So Malay urbanism began at the interface of land and water. Yeah? Whereas the phenomena of modern Malay civilization, now in Malaysia, for example, a lot of the Malays are in the rural areas. Of course, a lot of migration to the city, but in a sense, that culture, the urban culture, has not really been established by the modern Malays. The Malays who come to stay in the modern cities, they are not part. In other words, look at the kind of settlements, they come from the lower income group and so on. In other words, they don't impress an identity. They don't imprint an identity as far as urban culture is concerned. Something yet to be developed. Something to, I think you talk about the unfinished business. This is unfinished business, yeah, basically. Okay. So the importance of Pembandaran, but the point is bandar, that refers to that development in the coastal. I know there's a debate in Sarawak question between the Malays of Sarawak and the Ibans of Sarawak, who came first in Sarawak, and then because the Malays dominated the pesisir, the coastal areas. So, but I'm not debating. One of my students, this Shazani, talks about the significance of the Santubong, the Santubong civilization. So anyway, it shows that this idea still, continues through our time. Okay, now the maritime symbolism in Malay literature. I just briefly here because now actually there are many maritime symbols in Malay proverbs in our Peribahasa. These are in Peribahasa. Peribahasa is the treasury of traditional Malay wisdom. I appreciated this very much because when I was in school, when I was in Sekolah Rendah, in lower school, we read at the time the Kiliran Budi, Kitab Kiliran Budi. Kitab Kiliran Budi. Kitab Kiliran Budi, we learn all the peribahasa. Yes, but unfortunately, that I don't know. I mean, the one who took this priest Sharada, collected this traditional wisdom. But the point is, we have a lot of unwritten this wisdom, the traditional wisdom. But among them, there are maritime symbols. I hope somebody will write, maritime symbols in the Malay peribahasa. It's a good exercise. Now, I have to talk about maritime symbols in the poetry of Hamzah Fansuri. If you read an Atas book, or you read directly the Shair, the poetry of Hamzah Fansuri, who lived in the 16th century. So it's a lot of maritime symbolism. Because these symbols became, in a sense, occasions for him to provide a spiritual interpretation. Where everything becomes symbols. The boat becomes symbol, the ship becomes symbol, the sea becomes symbol, the wave becomes symbol. So in other words, he wrote the Shair Prahu and the Shair Dagang, but the word Dagang itself is a very symbolic word. It means both travel and trade. It's a Dagang. But Hamzah Fansuri used this to symbolize his path, in spiritual path. I think that is the thing. So, but I'm talking at a broader significance. The significance of this is that these maritime symbols remind us of the all-embracing nature of Malay civilization as a maritime civilization. In other words, the maritime symbols are to be found practically in every aspect of civilization. That is the proof that Malay civilization is a maritime civilization, not just is, but also before. Okay. Now, modern challenges, I come now to the last part here, modern challenges to Nusantara ecology. Well, the future. It is about the future of Malay maritime civilization. What is the future? Look again at the geophysical character of Nusantara, the ecological dimension of Nusantara. Now, the implications of modern material development, we are developing at a very, very rapid rate. It's going to change the face of Nusantara, the geophysical one, the ecology one. Climate change is going to have effect. The global warming has impact. These islands, what is the destiny of these thousands of islands at a time? Who knows what is going to change? What will stay to come? Na'uzubillah, about the change in climate, the level of water, what is going to happen to Java island? Is Java sinking? Or Jakarta sinking? Are we going to have sinking islands? These are all, you cannot just ignore. These are real issues. And I said that modern development, the way we burn our forests in Sumatra, in Kalimantan, and so on, these are all going to have impact on our Nusantara's ecological health. So, so I thought to bring in also talking about the Nusantara civilization simply because we are a Nusantara in our inter-island connectivity. We cannot live except to live together. Then, of course, I told the Zari ambassador, Zari Karim, former ambassador to Iran and to Spain. It's my good friend, my classmate. I told him that ASEAN has to be thankful to Nusantara. Why? Because the people who inspired the formation of ASEAN were the people of the Nusantara. Tunku Abdul Rahman, President Sukarno, and President Macapagal. First just formed ASA, the Association of the National Bilateral ASEAN. When Tunku Abdul Rahman said, I have a dream. I want to make sure that all the 10 nations of the, at that time 10, belum ada Timor Leste, 10 is a VFB ASEAN. But my point is, historically, it was the Nusantara spirit that gave birth to ASEAN. Many people have forgotten that. So thank you, Prof. Sudah? Terima kasih.
Terima kasih. Thank you very much, Professor Usman. It's always enlightening and refreshing to listen to Professor Usman's discourse. I remember in 1998, I think, your inaugural lecture at University of Malaya, I attended. And I was inspired by the lecture, so much so that I named my daughter after the lecture, the word philosophia. You were explaining about philosophy and philosophia. So that was 3 months before my daughter was born. So I named her Sophia. And I told my wife, my late wife, and my daughter that I named, she's now Dr. Sophia, practicing at HUKM. So thank you. Also, there's a hybrid temperament in Tanjung, in Penang. It's not the Malay, it's not the others, but it's a hybrid. And you're right, when you argue, we can embrace one another in Penang only, not other parts of the Malay archipelago. There are many points of interest. You have mentioned many important things, one of which is the Chaldean perspective. I was, when I was reading this series, I was looking into 2 discourses. One is Ibn Khaldun, the other is Ferdinand Berdel, looking at the Malay archipelago as another Mediterranean, but it's different. It's a different Mediterranean. Ibn Khaldun used the image of the reservoir. The desert is the reservoir of the Arab civilization. He did not say Islamic, he said Arab civilization. Tanah Air, I made that extension, comparison, is the reservoir of Malay civilization. Tanah Air. The problem here is that Tanah has been divorced from Air over the last 200 years. So again, this is an important concept. Tanah Air is the expression of the Malay archipelago. The configuration of the Malay archipelago will change due to climate change. Again, this is the future that we have to contend with. But it's important to see this interface. This Tanah is one with Air, and Air is one with Tanah. In other words, when we look into land and water, the Malay archipelago, we find that the Malays have traversed all land and all water. And this fluidity of the Malay archipelago has brought the concept of Tanah Air. The other one which I'm building up is the idea of Rantau and Merantau, Minang Kabau, Professor answering here. And Rantau and Merantau is part of that. It's a network. It forms the Tanah Air. So again, this is an expression of Tanah Air. It's not only an other ritual in Minangkabau, which the Rantau is a memory, a network of memories among the Malays in the Malay archipelago. It's not only peculiar to the Minangkabau. Also the word Dadang, very important. And the idea of time. Again, I would also posit when you mentioned that the Malays sail, the vessel, it has to be balanced. When we want to move, we cannot have a disproportionate vessel. So the word timbalan is important. Menimbal, timbalan. And we do not take the word timbalan seriously in Malay. When you don't have a timbalan Perdana Menteri, that's where the problem began. So Timbalan is structured in Malay culture. And I remember this from Uncle Aziz. He said this about 40 years ago. He was analyzing the word timbalan, menimbal, timbal, when you have to timbal the kapal, so that the kapal won't sink. So it's the middle way, a balanced civilization, a balanced psyche. So again, the Tanah Air is, like you said, Prof, the manifestation of the Malay psyche. And today, I think we have a greater understanding. I also have a greater understanding of Malay maritime civilization. I'm not satisfied with what I have done, because I wanted to also to study or people talk about the coastal societies, the littoral societies, the peninsula and the islands in the Malay archipelago, because these littoral societies are they are formed due to other forces. The Hadamis are famous for that. They formed the littoral societies, the Malay archipelago. Also, if you look at forms of architecture, forms of bandar, the Shah Bandar, and Kota Pelabuhan. These are characters of Malay urbanism and Malay cosmopolitanism. The other is the category of jiwa. Always, when you want to define the Malay, there are 4 elements based on the reservoir of Budi. Where does Budi come from? I suspect, this is my hypothesis, Budi comes from, although it comes from Buddhi, Buddhi Sanskrit means a network of intelligence, rationality and emotion and irrationality, but it does not come from Hinduism or Buddhism in other geographies. It comes from the Buddhism in Palembang during the Sriwijaya period. That's a hypothesis. And this gravitates throughout the Malay archipelago, the either Buddhi and 3 other elements, Jiwa, Rasa, and Rupa. This makes the metaphysical cosmos of the Malay. Anyway, we invite questions and comments from the floor as well as from online. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Please. Your name, please.
Thank you, sir. I'm Saimalia from Pakistan. Thank you so much, sir. It's really a pleasure to listen to you. I really like the language about the Malay, because I don't know this language. First time I came from Pakistan here, and it's my 2nd session which I attended with you guys, the brilliant core of this product. And I like the language. You told the sentence, the Malay language is a gender neutral. So I think it's the easy way to understand the language. And I think it takes few time, very little and short time to understand and learn this new language. And second one, 2 things which sir also explained, which I was doubted, and thank you so much, sir. You explained that very well from the Buddhism. Now I understand that word which was written that what is this Buddhi. So then you explained it very well from the perspective of Buddhism. Thank you again.
Well, yeah.
Actually, that was interesting. The water and tanah combination of the Malay psyche. I think who else knows better than this freedom fighters in the subcontinent who managed to liberate the subcontinent from British powers. He was giving the combination of these 4 elements of the iron and what you call from the earth. The iron can break the rock. The fire can melt the what you call iron, and then the water that can extinguish the fire, and the air that can take in the water in the clouds and that reigns. And the spiritual perspectives on that, the two hands of the dua with Allah, that's more powerful than the rest. So now here, with this combination of 4 different civilizational impact, so I just maybe would like you to elaborate further, because some places it may be the air, that's where the supremacy of the United States for the last 100 years, because they conquer the air, the space, and that's why they rule. The British colonized the world because they conquered the sea. So this has the combination, perhaps maybe the future metaphysical research that could guide us for in case of emerging future civilizations and things like that.
To talk about well, first of all, thank you for the comment, for the your attempt to, in a sense, to give an interpretation of the possible combination of the 4 elements, what each component is capable of, of impacting our life. But of course, from the viewpoint of, say, Islamic science, for example, because the 4 theory element is very, very important in Islamic science. They have expanded that theory that was developed by the Greeks, to much more sophisticated level. So like Ibn Sina, for example, the way he applied that, especially in medicine, which influenced, of course, of the Malay world. A lot of works on medicine, Islamic medicine, were translated or were paraphrased in Malay. And that was not difficult for the Malays, precisely because the Malays have already inherited that theory from the Hindu. Basically, Buddhism, when it comes to this kind of thing, was an extension of Hinduism. And they did not come up with a new, as far as Buddhism is concerned, the four elements. I think in the case of Ibn Sina, by applying that to food, basically, how in other words, how the 4 elements, water, earth, fire, and air, impacted, for example, the production of food, whatever is to be eaten by human beings. And that, because what we eat is going to impact on our psyche, on our health, and so on. And I think the premise that is very, very important is that in different regions, the composition of the 4 varies. It's not the same. But you're trying to link now, let's say, the British, the success of the British. I don't know. I mean, I'm trying to figure out. I mean, how can it can be? The only thing is that the traditional science or the 4 elements is losing. In other words, modern science is destroying. Modern science has relegated, has marginalized, and even made the 4 people is forgotten, except certain people in more traditional societies. In more societies, I mean, I know in my village there could be someone who still can talk about this 4, and apply it not only to food, but to many other things. So basically, a traditional science that has lost significance. Not that the modern medicine has showed the shallowness of the 4 theory. No, they just came up with an alternative path, and then let the old science take care of its own destiny. It's not that. This is very important. The 4 theory has not been forgotten because it has shown to be false, but because modern science came up with a new theory. or chemical. But I'm trying to harmonize. I try to do. In other words, there's no conflict between the four theory and the modern elemental theory. Is that is based on different perspectives. Yeah, you know very well that the chemical elements of the modern chemistry is based upon what is called atomic weight. Yeah, whereas the traditional volume theory is based on qualities. This is very important. Yeah, because traditional science is a qualitative science. When you talk about wetness, about being hot, being cold, and these are basically qualities. Yeah, it's not. It shall not reduce that to simply what can be recorded by the thermometer. That's only an aspect of that. So while we gain something through the chemical theory, the modern theory, but we have lost something. We have lost something that is conveyed by the modern. So I think
actually, I was thinking, sometimes I really go deep thought into it. So I really look at it, the historical civilization, geopolitical situation that have happened, and that's what is going to happen. For example, the collapse of the Ottoman Empire and Turkish, who were the rulers of the world because they were the most powerful army on the earth. And what collapsed them? They were too busy with their security internal that they left the sea conquered by the British. And then when they emerged and they did a lot of research and they got ahead of rest, then they colonized the world. After that, then comes that what else? Then control the water through the air, which has the more powerful. And then they have done the space researches and they've gone far ahead than any part of the world. Now they rule the world for the last 200, 300 years. The future, and again, going back to Earth, because I see the technological evolution coming, artificial intelligence, is just based on the rare earth, which China controls 90%. And that's where the all Pentagon and everything, they surrender to them because 90% of the rare earth come from China. Whatever 10% remains, some in Australia, and maybe only 5% in Afghanistan. That's what everybody is fighting for, to control the country. Lawlessness is actually. So I see that artificial intelligence and the rare earth is the backbone of this artificial intelligence. So that future development, I could see, that's why that everybody is scary of the dominance of Chinese and coming future power for the world.
Yes, no, I got it. Yes, I mean, what it means, what the latest discoveries have shown. If I want to use a phrase, I think, in each of the four elements, there is power. There's power in each of the four elements. Yeah, but as a Muslim, I think while we can accept that, and maybe our scientists should also try to do research how to get the benefit from this, but we also to see, I mean, other meaning, other aspects of this. What is that? I think what I see is this. Basically, what we need an integrated approach to the study of these four, and I agree with you. In other words, the meaning of power is going to change. The meaning is not the same. In other words, it's no longer having the largest army. I mean, in the future, it's not going. It doesn't mean anything. Even the stockpile of nuclear weapons is going to mean nothing. It's just make redundant. That the concept of power. So yeah, we are changing. In other words, yeah, basically. Yeah.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead. Azrin, please.
But Dato, you have been talking about Malay world. Can you explain to us, to me, how is it related to the Austronesian world?
In our times now, I think there are a number of academic scholars who want to go back, want to trace, to go in the sense of the origin, the common origin of the Malay archipelago and Polynesia, and going even to Hawaii and to New Zealand, to the Maoris. Actually, there's a lot of activity going on. One of my friend, maybe some of you know very well, Professor Shahril Mohammad Zain, is going into that kind of research. Yeah, even going back to the word Nusa just now, the word Nusa is common to both the Malay and the Polynesian. Nusa, yeah, and also Air, yeah. So when I think Professor Hud Saleh was the chair of the Malaysia chair in New Zealand. He had a very, very close relationship with the Maoris there. I mean, he came up with very interesting connection, cultural connection about that. Yeah, so in other words, that's why we are broadening the meaning of the semantic of the word Malay, rather than trying to limit it, to narrow it. And I think we will discover more if we expand the meaning of Malay. We go to the anthropological meaning, while not forgetting also for example, the political meaning of that in, say, for example, in the context of Malaysia. No, we're not, but we should also broaden our perspective on the semantic of Malay. Then you find that there are similarities.
Yeah. Following from this question, it's an interesting question. Why did the diaspora happen? Meaning that why did they move out? That's one question. I mean, why? Usually people leave for a reason. Not enough food, not enough land, not enough, so they spread out. So I'm just curious. But my question is not that actually. My question is, since we discussed Malay Muslim civilization, I wanted to see what are the transitions and what are the changes. I know it's kind of difficult. So from a Hindu Majapahit Empire and to before that, a different civilization, as we move through the different civilizations, what role did the religion change the civilization?
My own theory about the origin of Malay Islamic civilization in Nusantara, in Pelagon, I take as a starting point for the tentatively until we have we have other data, other evidence. In other words, taking the assessment of the Sultanate. The beginning of the Sultanate is the beginning of Malay Islamic civilization, because the Sultanate, the Malay Sultanate, embodies the ideal of the in a sense we can compare with the rise of Islamic civilization, with the origin of Islamization in Medina. Yeah, because in Islam, politics and religion are not separated. So politics enters into the very definition of Islamic civilization from the very beginning. The Prophet ﷺ was the leader of the community. He was the head of the city-state in Medina. So I took that as my guide. In other words, if I want to look, when was the beginning of Malay civilization, I look, when was the first Sultanate? The Sultanate. That is the more important. Of course, that Sultanate being born, it doesn't mean that in terms of the beliefs, the new converts to Islam, the Malay, the new Malays in that context who embrace Islam, I think in this I agree with what the process of Islamization, which had to go to be, in the case of the theory by Professor Nakib Ontas. In other words, the teachings of Islam began to be disseminated, to be interpreted But I believe there was a kind of active dialogue. Not that the word is used that, in other words, the interaction between the religious leaders of the previous religion and the new religious. There was. I cannot imagine that there wasn't, and there must have been. Yeah. In other words, if for nothing else, it's just simply for to queries and inquiries, and they want to know what is this new religion. So this new religion, it happens that I think I support the idea that most of the traders who came, they were also Sufis at the same time. There were Sufis and traders at the same time. And the proof is provided what was happening in other parts of the Islamic world. That's not unique to the 13th century, the 12th century, at the time when the traders came, that was happening also in Mali, in what is today what is called Mali, the Mali Empire. At that time in Africa, it was the age when Sufism basically dominated the Muslim world in terms of knowledge. In terms, that was true. Yeah. So at the moment I took the beginning to the second half of the 13th century, and that's people refer to Kedah. Let's say Kedah now. Yeah, the civilization changed. I mean, it was not abrupt. I mean, it was evolutionary. Even though the Sultan, the Raja had become Sultan, and the Raya listened to and follow them, but I think the Islamization was a process. Of course, the Sultan, the Sultanate has to establish the Sharia, but it's all the gradual. It's not kind of thing. So I would say that the Aqidah and the Sharia happen at the same time, and this civilization transition. Does that transition? So that transition didn't mean that. This is one thing I talk about the nature of the Malay civilization. It's inclusive. It's inclusive because you take the question of language, for example. There were pre-Islamic words of religious significance. They were kept. They were kept because they were not in contradiction to Islam. Let's say sembahyang, for example. Yeah, they didn't at that time. They didn't talk about salat. Not like now. You see, you must use the word salat. No, it is sembahyang. Yeah. This is that they go to this extreme example. No, the Malays, my parents didn't ever use the word salat. They thought sembahyang. But we know that sembahyang is not the same as sembahyang to continue. Yeah, it's not the same sembahyang. They know. We say the same word. So in other words, the semantic, the pre-Islamic semantic, was just simply expanded by the new Islamic semantic of the new religion. Sometimes the way is the Malay way of doing it. You know? Sorry, yeah? This book Akal Budi. Actually, there's a lot of similarity between Akal Budi, but then they keep the two words together. Yeah, Akal Budi. So in other words, there's a Malay ingenuity now. The Malay ingenuity. How to respond? Yeah, they did not reject. The word kurnia, for example, karuna, the Buddhist idea of karuna. Karuna means grace, means compassion. That's karuna. That's now. How did the word karuna in Buddhism change the word kurnia in Malay from karuna to kurnia? I present one purpose on this. So the kurnia in our Allah kurniakan is what Allah kurniakan. That is the divine compassion, grace. Yeah. So the Malays at that time did not have that fear. If they use that word, they're going to be kafir or to be no. We differ in position with some of the Malays now who insist it must be Arabic. No, it doesn't have to be Arabic. Yeah.
It's amazing how they were able to integrate, and therefore the changes did not seem so radical to anyone.
Yeah.
And their lifestyle was almost not the same, but
yeah.
They were able to maneuver it. So now that's why you find Malays are very easily accepting of many ideas.
Yeah.
Your openness, as you started in the beginning.
Openness. Yeah, it was cultural openness. It reflected in language. The most important is in language. Yeah. Bahasa used by the Buddhists. Used in the Malay Hindu.
The solemn practice we have, like puasa, sembahyang is still.
That's right. Yeah.
These are so essential.
Yeah.
And we were able
most of my life, I used to do sembahyang. I've been used to do sembahyang. I didn't have to do salat. Because that doesn't mean, it doesn't mean that because the Christians also do salat. The Arab Christians, yeah, then you do a prayer. Okay.
Yeah.
So what's the message? The emotion is the meaning. The meaning is that's the important one. The content, not the substance.
It transformed like everything. It was able to slowly integrate and therefore absorb. And you can actually appreciate it.
There was interaction, I think. There was interaction. It's a gradual formation. Because if we look at the time span, there was a Buddhist cosmopolis, actually, for some many hundreds of years. Say from Sri Vijaya's Buddhist, from 7th century until we go to 10th, 11th century. So there was a Buddhist cosmopolis. And this Buddhist cosmopolis was slowly eroded by, maybe this is contested, by the Persian cosmopolis. Persian cosmopolis, because we have to thank the Mongols for it. When the Mongols raided Baghdad in 1258, there was a diaspora of missionaries and Sufis from the Abbasid Caliphate to the Malay archipelago. So here we see diasporic elements coming from outside and the element of religion and shifting of kepercayaan, those cosmopolis. So again, it's important to see how these metamorphosize in the Tanah Air. Another one which, before I come to this question from Zoom, you mentioned about the climatic zones. I think I found a map in Ali Idrisi and Masoodi. I had to reread the maps. I'm looking at some maps of the Al-Atas Library. They divided maps into some seven climatic zones. It's important to look into this from a geographical, environmental perspective also, because how the environment shaped human beings. I think the early Islamic classical philosophers and thinkers have already established that. So again, this is not just a popular saying, but I think it should be studied how different climatic zones, and in this case, particularly the Malay archipelago, have shaped and fashioned the Malay psyche and the difference between this to the Arabs in the desert, or those in the continental climes, or in temperate climes. So this is the Tanah Air climate, tropical equatorial climate, having its own characteristics and imbuing upon us here a sense of identity. There's one Zoom question from Zoom. Let me see. Yeah. This is on the use of the theory of Umran by Ibn Khaldun to our Malay archipelago and Tanah Air concept. The question is there already a founded characteristic of the sedentary versus nomadic Malays, and how can we frame them in time and space?
Can you repeat the last bit?
Yeah. Is there already a founded characteristic of the sedentary versus nomadic Malays, and how can we frame them in time and space?
Well, this is an open field, basically. I mean, that's why I said it's only a theory. I mean, but I think in need of research needs to be done if you want to talk about that transition from the nomadic life to the sedentary, which in our case, that's which Ibn Khaldun called the sedentary settlement, the sedentary civilization. That would correspond to, in our case, that would be the what we call the coastal settlement. Basically, it is the question is one was, I mean, which is we don't know. I mean, we have to do research. One was that the beginning of the various Malay coastal settlements, whether in the form of kampung air, in the form of the different, basically it's the kampung air, the emergence of the kampung air will help, I think. If we can do some research on the history of the kampung air, the water village, that would be interesting. But I know I'm just beginning to do, but we have to do some research in order that movement from the, what do you call, from the Orang Laut, basically, the nomadic Orang Laut, and the beginning of the kampung, the village, kampungan, basically the beginning of perkampungan, peradaban perkampungan, the umran, basically, because we have to understand the word umran as used by Ibn Khaldun, basically is a larger concept that embraces both the nomadic and the sedentary civilization. When we talk about the sedentary civilization, basically we're going to the idea of towns, the idea of city. That would be the idea of Medina, the idea of that city or town. Very interesting. It's an interesting field. I mean, we encourage the young scholars of Malay civilization to investigate, to look at this. Maybe you don't have something to say.
In the context of Hadari and Badawi, Badawi movement, nomadic and Hadari settles. And this is also can be seen in the Malay Archipelago. The Rantau and Merantau is Hadari and Badawi in terms of its dynamism. Yeah, sorry. Thank you. I think we call it a day. Thank you, Prof. Osman. Again, we look forward to your paper chapter. We're coming up with hopefully about 17 chapters from the book. We have 2 more sessions. Inshallah, in September, October, I've not fixed the date. 1 more lecture from the somebody who is in maritime policy, and the last lecture will be from me, going through and giving some framework and moving forward with regard to the recording the book by one historian who's the Empire of the Winds, when he described this region as the place where the winds converge, and that therefore peoples converge. The atas angin and the bawah angin is also an instrumental category in understanding Malay maritime civilization. With that, we thank you very much, and thank you to our colleagues, ISTAC colleagues, and my friends and my students who are here. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum. So, the people in the Zoom, I'm sorry, there was one question. Thank you for attending this lecture.